give a quick overview of our program and what goals we have overall and how we're going to try and accomplish some of that today. So really, going into the goals for the program are to help people, students, postdocs, trainees, or even faculty at any level, to be able to generate ideas and test feasibility. And I think we're going to go a little bit into that today. And then we're going to try and cover topics like business, how to come up with a good business model using a business model campus or other means. And we also want to look into training our workshops on how to pitch ideas to, once you have them formed, to venture capitalists. And eventually the big goal is to really help or facilitate interdisciplinary team building. And for that among students and postdocs from different schools as listed here. So this is just a flow diagram of what we have done, and this is going to go online next week on our website. Is really what HBN is trying to do is, I don't have a pointer here, but really if you look through the loop there are two different aspects of our program. One is going to be really workshops that we are trying to accomplish here, and that should really lead to maybe one-on-one mentoring to our mentors that participate in the workshop. And the other thing we're doing, which is not shown here, is online mentoring, where we have a huge list of mentors from these different specialties that are affiliated either with Hopkins, different organizations at Hopkins, or alumni, or other local entrepreneurs or people associated with entrepreneurship. And we want to be able to connect people with specific questions or topics to these mentors. And that online service is also going to go online to our website next week. So really, to give an overview of what the program, the highlights again are, we want to do topic-based ideation, which is coming up next, and interdisciplinary team building, like I said. And one other aspect I want to point out is peer mentoring. Like we have today with us a student from Hopkins who's going to help us look into ways of ideation and really be one of our mentors. And really also I think if you guys are participating in this series of workshops in the program, you probably have a lot of opportunity for networking for future opportunities. And here is a list of the upcoming events, and without going into much detail, I think that we'll send out more information about that. And lastly, I just want to give a little, sorry, the slide is a little misformatted, but if you guys want to get involved, these are the ways. You probably have, some of you might have already signed up for the newsletter that goes out every 2 weeks called the Transcript. You can also sign up online to the announcement that's going out next week and then participate in the workshops. And I want to acknowledge people that have helped me and put together. So we have an ENP team that consists of Jane, who's here, Matt, and Janita, who's not here, she's a postdoc at JHU, and Angel, who's actually a past graduate of Cary, and he lives in LA now, but he's a creative, he helps with the creative content. And also the entire HBN team, which a couple of us are here today, and you'll get to meet them later. Also, I want to acknowledge some of our partners, like Innovation Factory, which is a student-run group at Cary's. A lot of you might have heard about their initiatives. And we're working closely with some of the Hopkins career development groups like JHU PDO, PDA, which is Postdoc Association, as well as the Social Innovation Labs. With that, I'd like to now go on to our introducing our speakers. So as you guys know, we have two speakers today. Nayoung, who is a faculty member at the Johns Hopkins Business School. And she has, in the past, some of you might have heard of her being organizing the JHU Bootcamp on entrepreneurship last year, and I think she hopes to do that. She is doing that this year. And one of the goals for her to be in this workshop is she's really trying to find people with good ideas. Like that's where she came to me. Like people in the sense like science and engineering, people that have good ideas and would like to help them go through her boot camp and probably take it to the next level. And so the other person we have here in the room is David. So David is an undergraduate in the biomedical engineering program, is that right?
That's right.
Who's about to graduate, and I actually first met David at Barnes & Noble, and he asked me, so funding and establish his own company, and he'll tell you a little bit about how he's gotten from really having an idea, brainstorming, and going through the process, and has successfully launched his company, right?
Yep.
So with that, I'd like to ask Nayoung to tell us what she thinks about
Hey, Ankita, do you want to let people grab food in between?
Yes, so there's
Let's do
food,
that.
pizza, it's kind of dinner time, so.
Yeah, feel free to grab food. So I usually have 3-hour lecture, but Ankita is like, can you do it in 10 minutes?
Go for that. I'm not gonna-
So I'm just pretty much here to meet you. So just a little bit of background. I have a PhD from BME, so I was actually here years ago. It's amazing I couldn't find 18 Horse building after these years. And when I was graduating, I wanted to sell my algorithm from my PhD thesis to Siemens. I did brain imaging, and they were just totally not interested. And I was like, this is good science, my advisor is famous, we published here, and they were like, we don't care. So that's when I really got interested in just really moving science to business, and there's this whole gap. It's called tech transfer, where technology becomes a business. So my main job at Carey is I work with scientists who has an idea to move it. So we put a group of MBA students with a science to see if that goes anywhere. I'm doing Entrepreneurship Bootcamp for anybody at Hopkins campus. So Ankita said you can bring your idea, but you are welcome to come and join another person with an idea to just kind of create a team. But it is a highly it's a hands-on exercise where you need an idea to really move it. So I encourage you to join that, and you can ask me questions later, so I'm not spending too much time. So if I knew how to come up with a great idea, like David, I wouldn't be here. I'd be busy running companies. So my job is usually meeting with people and kind of dissecting their ideas, right? Because I've seen so many. I've worked on about 100 commercialization projects. I raise funds for different companies. That's what I do for my consulting. And I think one thing I just want to share with you in this short time is that types of ideas. I think that's a good place to start. So if you have an idea, I think it's good to start to think about like kind of categorizing your idea. Does it make sense? And then again, I'm trying to summarize all my lecture, but let's just put like 2 spectrums of ideas. Let's work with that. So in business, we work with ideas. How many people think ideas come from just out of blue? Like totally messy, a genius person in his garage, kind of, right? That's one extreme, right? And how do you think companies come up with an idea? Like typical companies in the US. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about the US, but basically, it looks like people are trying to address either a social problem that seems like there's a market for it, either in this country or elsewhere, and has more of a global market. That's been one thing. So it's a social problem, or I would say a medical problem, a technical problem, which could be either medical or some other high tech.
So what I hear is like some problem, some market. Anyone else? Yeah.
Actually, I work for GE Healthcare, and my wife here works at Hopkins. I mean, practically, we don't come up with any ideas. We just buy ideas and we make them into products.
Right?
Yeah.
So you listen to customers. That's usually like a big corporations. They usually listen to the market, listen to their customers, and they do. We call it incremental ideation. Right? They use their sales. Customers are usually really good source of ideas, right? They're GE's using their existing scanners. They will go out and ask, how can we improve? And it's really important to them because they have to kind of rely on their existing infrastructure. They cannot make too much of a gap, right? They have Salesforce. They have their well, what would be the other extreme of idea generation? If I'm giving you, this is one extreme of how ideas coming from, customer-based, market-based, problem-driven. What would be, and we see this side more at Hopkins. Any idea? But we have lots of scientists here, right? So research-driven,
Discovery.
like discovery. We use the word like technology, right? So in the business literature, we call them market pull ideas and technology push ideas. Do you see the differences? Right, so can somebody give me an example of technology push ideas or companies who did the technology push?
The iPod.
So that's the one that gets debated. What do you guys think? iPod, is that
The
really
original one.
the original iPod? Was it technology push or market pull?
Technology existed before it, but I think it was a combination.
Okay. iTunes, I think, was the technology part, right? Like the whole platform cloud kind of sharing the music. I would put it somewhere here. So anybody like technology push ideas?
CT scan.
CT scans, right? There was no really. What was before CT? I can't believe I'm asking you this.
X-ray.
X-rays.
Right, X-ray, let's say X-ray. A new technology came up and it had to create a market, right? So we call these ideas, they don't go hand in hand, but these are some categories that we use for ideas. Radical ideas, right? If you're pushing it and you're disrupting it, you're radical. It's good and bad. So what are some pros of these ideas that come out of Hopkins? Technology push radical ideas that are new ideas. What are some pros?
You're the only one.
You'll be the only one for a while. You think you're the only one, but probably you're not. Yeah.
So what about so in order to really make an idea go into the market, you have to have the market, right? I mean, isn't that almost, how else are you going to sell your idea?
But I'm claiming that I meet a lot of entrepreneurs like this. My idea is so new, there's no market yet, right? I mean, I agree. So some other, I use Tesla example, like electric cars was really not there, right? So these ideas, when you do market research, we're really going ahead of the curve, right? You're creating, so what are some, let's just keep going, what are some disadvantages of these ideas then? Like, it's a great idea, it has a huge potential if it takes up you're the only one, but what are some disadvantages?
Selling the idea.
Educating people, the adoption will definitely be,
Funding might be a problem because if there's no evidence for it really working, some investors will not really.
well, I wouldn't make a general statement, right? Because, so would investors only fund ideas that are market-driven, customer-driven? What is the problem with these solutions? Customers don't know the next technology. Customers cannot foresee the. So for example, 3M, you guys know the company. They use this method called lead user research. So they actually intentionally do not talk to their existing customers, but they will go find people who are like visionaries in the field. Or I think if you're an expert in the field, so if let's say if you're a brain imaging person, you kind of know what's coming next. So if you want to go after these kind of ideas, the whole market that you're looking at changes. So whether there's a market or not is a subjective statement, right? But what I wanted to just really want you to think about is when you have an idea, like where it's falling under, because the strategy, like how to attract investors, what kind of investors, how your invention is going to fare completely changes. So there's a famous guy who wrote a book called Innovator's Dilemma. So corporates are really hard to do this kind of, this kind of innovations, right? As I mentioned. So that's where startups come in and filling this gap. So new ideas, disruptive ideas, really technology push ideas, and especially at Hopkins, we have this wealth of technologies. A lot of ideas that you're familiar with, I think would fall under this, right? But like we discussed, there are many, many pros, but there are cons as well. Okay? So I just wanted to show you, and if I had more time, there's this whole array of ways to categorize your different ideas, right? So we covered pretty much everything, right? So yeah, one point I usually make is, this is usually how it will be done, through traditional market research, but radical ideas come from this spectrum too. So I don't think you should like kind of force yourself to, I'm not saying you should force yourself to go either way, but just really understanding where you're coming from is important. And I don't have time to hear about all your ideas, but usually a lot of scientists, technologists, I see this. Then your job is to try to find a market and problem that matches your technology. Usually companies, they have a very structured way to identify problems and customers, and they try to find technology. Like, so I've seen both ways. Okay? And this is a typical innovation process that I use a bigger company usually as an example of when they have an idea. Prototype is very important as well. So I don't know what kind of company, do you have software?
Yeah,
right?
we have software.
Yeah, so am I up? I just say one more sentence.
You're fine. Go ahead.
I'm fine. Prototyping for an idea is very important, especially very, very early on. So we're talking about how many of you guys know the company called Ideo? Ideo in West Coast. They are known for coming up with like innovative products. So what they do is, when you have an idea, it's not enough for you to put it on a paper, but you really need something, a rough prototype, to communicate with people, to refine the idea, right? So software, it's somewhat easier. We have we build a minimal viable product. We just provide very, very rough mock-ups to communicate your ideas, to get feedback. So that's the next thing that I teach in the step of idea generation. How many percentage of your ideas come up with, like how many do you think is viable, essentially? What are we talking about here?
5%.
Out of all the good ideas that people come up with,
5%.
I think Edison, that's my introduction slide usually, I think he had thousands of ideas, right? And he ended up with a couple, pretty much that's what we're talking about. So you really have to have this approach that you're gonna generate as many ideas as possible, but you need feedback from the market, or not necessarily existing market, but the new market. But what do you need? You need a vehicle to explain what your idea is. And that's what I see the biggest challenge for us scientists, especially at Hopkins, is you have an idea, it's really, really hard to communicate what the idea is. And I think part of idea generation is you get the idea, you get a feedback, modify it, you pivot, that's the word we use, you edit, you change, but nothing is gonna be possible if you cannot convey the idea to somebody, to users, future users, potential users, or lead users. There are different people that you can talk to. So that's like a brief preview of my lecture. If you're interested, I teach this course called Discover to Market at Carey. I believe it's free for medical students and PhD students. So what we do is we pair you up with a scientist at Hopkins, either clinicians or faculty member who has an idea. It's usually very technology-driven ideas, and then we look at the market side to see if there's a good match. And then for the bootcamp, we assume that somebody's coming with an idea, and we put a team of people to do the following steps. So I know I'm out of time, but any questions? So can I take questions?
Does bootcamp come before or after you actually file with the technology transfer office?
So we ask you to at least talk to the tech transfer to make sure that it's protected.
Right.
And 1 minute IP whatever issue. So if you get paid by Mr. Hopkins, Hopkins owns everything. So either than undergrads and MD students, medical students, like unless you pay Hopkins, you're here because they pay you, then they own your own intellectual property. But at the same time, another reason that you should disclose a tech transfer is the moment that you disclose your idea to somebody, we're talking about lab meeting, conferences, like any kind of public disclosure, that will work against your patent. Does it make sense? So when you try to file a patent on your idea, if you yourself talk to somebody about the idea, that will count as a prior art to your own idea. So you have to disclose to somebody. So what tech transfer is doing is when you disclose it to them, they will file a provisional patent so that it's protect. It gives you time stamp on when your idea came about. So you have a protection. But if you're doing it outside of Hopkins, which I totally encourage you, you just have to make sure that it's protected somehow.
Is that what it is with most hospitals?
Every employer, if you work for Google and you come up with an idea, what happens? Say 100%, it's in the
Unless you do it at
employment.
home.
But it's really hard to prove what was at home, what was in your garage. But especially in an industry, Hopkins doesn't have a clause, but if it's related to your area, they will have a reach over it. Yeah.
What about for someone who's working at Hopkins, being paid by Hopkins, but is also taking classes and paying for those classes?
I think getting paid by Hopkins precedes, so you're still a Hopkins employee. When you signed your employee contract, I think there was a section there saying you were handing over all the intellectual property.
But it's a split, right? It's a one-third split between the PI and the department.
Oh, you mean the future revenue?
Yeah.
We can talk offline later, but it is 1/3, but it's after discounting all the patent costs and any upfront investment that Hopkins put in. So.
And also the lab gets like 15%.
Yeah, but as an entrepreneur, you have an option to license it out into your company as well. Does it make sense? You're the inventor, so you came up with something in your lab, you were disclosed at Hopkins, you can buy it back from Hopkins and then bring it back to you, so that's 100% is yours. But you have to pay Hopkins like some early royalty.
So these are all questions that tech. You work. I'm not clear on this, but do you work in the tech transfer office or with them very closely? Right?
Yeah. So if any tech, I would be happy to introduce you to one of them. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs have questions before you go there, so in case that, what if they like stole my idea or like I have to split the revenue. So yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you as well.
Okay. Well, thank you. So we'll have David go up there and tell us
All right.
the story about it.
I wish I got to see something like this before I started my company. I think probably what I'll be talking about for the most part is all the times that I failed, all the times that I didn't do these things, and how I kind of bounced back and forth between these two ways of thinking, how I think eventually we figured it out. So my story is, I'm an undergrad here, I study BME with a focus on computational biology. And my freshman year I was working with some other undergrads on a project, Carcinex Diagnostics, and we were building medical devices for bladder cancer diagnostics. It was a non-invasive device that increased the sensitivity of urine cytology tests. That was great, and I met a lot of people. In particular, I met some people at the Brady Urological Institute here at Hopkins. And that project went pretty well. We filed a provisional patent. We did a couple business plan competitions, did well with that. A lot of my colleagues graduated. They were all seniors. I was the youngest on the team. And at that point, I kind of realized, okay, you know what? I'm not really that interested in hardware. I really want to get into software. So, long story short, I worked over the summer for a company I was working in finance, and I came back to Hopkins really gung-ho about starting something. And one of my colleagues who was on the Carcinex team came up to me and said, hey, you got to meet one of these doctors here at Brady Urological Institute. So I went in, kind of used a connection I had. Does anyone know Dr. Coffey? He has a really cool story. got connected through Dr. Coffey, and met Dr. Veltri, a researcher. And Dr. Veltri was working on Gleason grading using imaging and machine learning. Has anyone here taken histology courses? Couple? Okay, the sad thing is I haven't, and I look at histology slides all day. I'm just a software guy, and I kind of have learned a little bit along the way, but I know enough histology to get by and write the programs. So what he was doing, I'm probably never getting this quick. Can I use that? Thanks. So we were looking at TMA cores. So if you had a prostate biopsy, there's fine needle biopsy, you have a lot of nuclei here. He was using some techniques, and eventually we started a project similar to the research he was doing. We identify the nuclei, sort of do these graphs here where we understand the layout of the nuclei. Computationally, we'd see the roundness of the nuclei, we'd measure many other things about the images, and then we'd come up with some sort of feature vector, and then use machine learning to classify samples based on Gleason grade. So, a lot of medical students here, a lot of people with medical backgrounds. For those of you who don't know, Gleason grade is for prostate cancer, kind of how a urologist, or rather how a pathologist would measure aggressiveness. So we were initially classifying samples 3+4 versus 4+3, which is clinically significant. Long story short, I brought on some teammates kind of to do this as a project, some other BME undergrads. We worked with Dr. Veltri, and we created some really cool algorithms which were able to classify these every time. We got it right all the time. And pathologists, they agree with each other only about half the time. So this is a huge problem. They're doing this visually under a microscope. We could do this with a computer and nail it. So we kind of went back and forth. We talked to a bunch of companies. We talked to, some scanner companies and some diagnostic facility companies. And sort of this idea was very far-fetched. The FDA was not ready to really touch this. And the team that I had that was working on it was pretty slow in developing it. They were great people, and I still talk to them every day. But by the end of that year, we kind of decided, okay, we're gonna bring on a new team. I brought some people that I knew very well, much more of an interdisciplinary team. I brought on some software developers, and I really kind of took this a much leaner model. So that the first whole part, which kind of resided in this area, was pretty much a total failure. And what we did see, though, based on everything that we did there, and there's a nice ending to the story, and that we're still looking at this, and it's pretty promising. What happened when we switched the team is that we figured out that there was a huge market problem. Huge. I mean, this was exploding. So the way we look at this now is there's all these pathology labs, and they've been using microscopes for the past 150 years. This guy started using microscopes 150 years ago to look at medical samples, to diagnose disease, to predict outcomes, recommend treatments, etc. That created conventional pathology, and it really hasn't changed at all, except within the past 3 years. Huge shift, enormous. Namely, what's happening is that these pathology labs are implementing these hardware, these slide scanners. And these slide scanners take in samples similar to this, and they create really high resolution images, multi-gigabytes large. Has anyone ever heard of Aperio scanners or Leica scanners? They're out there. GE is kind of getting into the game. Philips digital pathology. This is digital pathology. So if you've ever heard of digital pathology, that's what's going on right now. The way that I see this as a technologist, and I think the way that not a lot of other people saw this in the market, is that that's a huge amount of data being created. I mean, shitloads of data from hundreds and hundreds of millions of biopsies every year. About 100 million, I think, actually. And we see that as incredible amounts of data points, and they're all being created digitally. They're all being shifted digitally. So we build software that leverages that shift. We use kind of the same techniques that we were using to look at these samples, and we aggregate these in a centralized platform. So our company is Proscia, and we have this cloud-based platform for digital pathology informatics. We do a lot of things, though. What we found out from people that we talked to in the market, pathologists, pathology labs, is that they didn't even have the basics for digital pathology. And there was a huge opportunity to do that. And this is what we're hoping to get to in the next 5, maybe 10 years. But they don't have a way right now for pathologists at Hopkins to share slides with pathologists at Stanford. I mean, it's really, really hard to do that. There's not great software. And so when we built our cloud-based system, we were really the first company that was able to nail that. And we did a big press release 2 weeks ago now, so over a year and a half since we first started the project. And actually 3 weeks ago we did the release, and things really have taken off. We've had pathology labs all over the place contacting us to use our software to move their slides into the cloud because their IT, their infrastructure can't handle it. We're really more of an IT company right now with kind of this underlying science focus. And so they can't handle these terabytes of data that are created when they scan these in. They have no way of creating medical education modules for the medical schools. We now have, let's say if you were 20 medical students here and I was doing a histology course, fortunately places at Hopkins have some software that's doing that right now. But first of all, there's not a very easy way to do this remotely, but more importantly, most places don't look like Hopkins, and most places they're looking at multi-head microscopes, which look like octopuses, and you have like a single slide and one person controlling it. And it's ridiculous, it's incredibly archaic, and we thought, let's make that all digital, and let's deploy this in a cloud platform, and let's sort of kind of mimic the way that it would be done under a multi-head microscope to create these collaboration tools, and then create these, this back-end storage and repository management. We integrated tons of data into our platform. And so, yeah, we're growing very quickly. Our business model has changed a ton. What's really unique about our company is that we're able to create this sort of SaaS model, software as a service. So, while a lot of companies, it costs about $35,000 for a lab to implement one of these systems, like these software platforms, in their lab. And a lot of companies you just buy the viewer, which doesn't even come close to how awesome ours is. You buy the viewer for $35,000, $50,000, maybe even up to $100,000, all the software, and you kind of just have that. That doesn't work for most labs because smaller labs have smaller volumes, and so we have this tiered model where you're paying based on images, number of images, amount of data that you're using. And then we tack on extra education and collaboration modules on top of that. Where we see ourselves going in the long run and what we're developing on the back end is stuff like this. So every image that comes into our platform, we're measuring everything about it. We're creating something that we call the tissue signature, TM. The tissue signature, I'm just trying to protect my intellectual property. Tissue signature is just a mathematical way to describe tissue, the images that pass into our platform. So yeah, we raised 8 months ago, we raised about $30,000, just a modest friends and family round. We're just closing about a $500,000 round right now, signing a couple really big clients. We partnered with one of the largest dermatopathology labs in the country. They're doing thousands of images per day, and we're co-developing melanoma diagnostics with them. So that's sort of, we're building the future of our platform. And we've done a really, really good job competing in this space. I think took a lot of the companies here by storm. Gotten attention of a lot of the big hardware, the scanner manufacturers. Yeah, it's been fantastic. So, I'd love to answer any questions you have about kind of how we approached this, the beginnings of our company, challenges we had, failures we had. Yeah.
So how long it took exactly from idea of conception to now?
Well, probably 20 months. 20 months. And I think we did it wrong for the first 9 months. Two things were wrong. First thing that was wrong was the team. And second thing that was wrong was our approach to the market. But I think the approach to the market was a necessary failure. It was something that had to be learned. But if I could go back and do it again, I would have started with one technical co-founder.
Do you use any of the Hopkins recipe, like fast food?
Now that we're getting into sort of back into some of this, which is, we take from an operations standpoint, we're much faster on these sort of short-term technologies and a little bit slower on these technologies. We're starting to work with Hopkins on this. Hopefully, and I say hopefully, which is unusual for me, licensing IP Hopkins because we actually want all that. So we built our baseline platform, we patented all of that stuff ourselves. We own just kind of really the base of everything that we're doing. And these modules that we're tacking on that are reimbursable and that can be priced separately and differently, we're looking to work with Hopkins. So we're moving slowly, but we're not quite there yet. So Hopkins, I met with Tech Transfer yesterday and I heard all the things that you were talking about. They were very, very helpful. And they're definitely not someone although they take a lot, certainly, you don't want to shy away from them if you want to build great technology, a great company. Yeah.
So I have a couple of things. So you said that the team is very important.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Can you sort of elaborate a little bit about how you went back and reformed your team and what factors you considered when you did that as far as like guiding principles? Can you just tell us a few things about that?
Yeah, so, the story went like this. I started the company and thought, I'm going to need a huge team to do this. I'm going to need like 10 people, and I'm just going to get them all, and they're going to be like, everyone's going to have a role, like you have a role in a company, like, the company has millions of dollars, and there's a VP and a CEO, and like, that's how it's going to be. And I was so wrong about that. And so I brought on like 4 software engineers, tried to not pay them anything, which doesn't work. You can't not pay someone something. You have to, you're much better off if you can get someone to come in and put in the sweat equity and probably split that. So I tried to bring on too many people. I tried to get away with not really treating them as employees when we didn't really have any money, and they all ended up getting compensated pretty well in the end, for the record. But we did everything in retrospect. We did all the IP assignments. We did, compensations and issuing stock and everything later. But when we started over, the thing that really triggered it was we had a really big. Has anyone ever heard of Rock Health? Rock Health is like a really very prestigious health incubator, and they've had companies. They're very new. They're started by this woman named Helly Tecco, and she's become super famous out in Silicon Valley for doing this. And so we were actually a finalist for Rock Health, and I had no idea what I was doing. I should not have been there at the time. I could see myself being a finalist today, but definitely I just got there on total BS back in the day. And we somehow became a finalist. We were supposed to fly out there to interview, and a finalist is like the top 2% of applicants. There were thousands of applicants. And this is an incubator, by the way. They fund you like $100,000. You get an office in Silicon Valley, connections to big investors, huge amounts of money flooding. They sell companies to Google like left and right. So I was supposed to fly out there. At that point, my co-founder was like, hey, I want to do research full time. And I was like, whoa, what? Like the day before, I was supposed to fly out there. I'm like, this is like everything I've ever wanted in my life, to have a really great opportunity like this. I would have put school on hold. And she said, hey, I just really like my lab. She had a lot of pressure from her parents to do that. And I think that's something that, looking back, I have to understand, have to be realistic about the fact, when you look for a co-founder, look for someone who's really in it. Really in it. You can't just have someone who's like, I'll do this on the side, and maybe if it takes off, it works. It doesn't really work like that. I sacrificed a whole lot to get here, and as have my co-founders, my newer co-founders. And so when I got the other people to come on the team, I really shouldn't be saying this in an academic institution, but one was we figured out a way for him to put school on hold. I figured out a way for myself to graduate early. I'm a junior right now, but I'm working to graduate early. One was doing a co-op, and the other was Has anyone ever heard of the Thiel Fellowship? Peter Thiel, founder of PayPal, pays like $100,000 to drop out of school. The other new co-founder was the Thiel Fellow. And so we're like, okay, we're all ready to put like everything into this and treat this like a real company so we can compete with real companies. And I think, you know, that certainly if you have the help of the university, you can probably get pretty far in just doing it, I don't want to say part-time, but, you know, maintaining a job. I wouldn't by any means, I didn't drop out of school and I wouldn't recommend, you know, dropping out for an idea because most ideas are pretty stupid. As we've heard, what, like 5%, 10% everyone thinks fails. And so, but I think you have to really be invested, personally. And that's what I've seen a lot of fellow entrepreneurs be successful, because they put a lot into it.
So what did you use the first 30K for? Was that for like Amazon Web Services kind of stuff, or were you just building a wireframe at that point? And then like, what did you raise the 500K on? Do you have traction already,
Yeah.
or who did you meet with? Was that through like connections through the Thiel Fellowship, or what? How did you get to talk to people? How did you get in front of people to talk to them?
Okay, I'm going to take this sort of in reverse. Fundraising is really, really hard. I mean, I did not know what I was getting into. When I heard other people say, they're like, oh yeah, we're raising a round, I thought, okay, great, you know, I'll just raise a round. But it doesn't really work like that. It's like, it's talking to like 4 people a day, 4 messages a day, constantly. And maintaining those relationships and following up them constantly. Getting into due diligence, sending them IP information, you know, convincing them about your traction, and that takes a really, really long time. I mean, it does. You don't just like get an investor. Someone says, "Yeah, I'll do it. You know, I'll give you Mark Zuckerberg $1 million," and then you just get the money. No, it takes like 3 months minimum to actually have all that money in the bank, and so that's taken a while. But we have family connections helped, but this was months. These were months of connections. We pitched at a million things. Innovation Factory was super helpful. I'm involved with that. Gave me the opportunity to pitch at a ton of events. We met a ton of investors that way. People would come up and say, hey, you know, that looks really cool. Why don't you talk to me? Why don't you talk to my friend? Why don't you talk to this person, this person? It all just kind of happens through this sort of random networking. The 30K, I'm going to make sure that I hit all these questions. The 30K, most of that went to legal. Legal's really expensive. Amazon is really not expensive, like insanely cheap. In fact, that's probably our biggest competitive advantage in like where we are right now. The reason why we were able to pull ahead is because we put out like free versions of our platform, and we have about 300 pathologists using this actively, and we have 10,000 images that we're posting on our platform, and we're paying like, you know, a couple $100 a month. Like, it's crazy cheap, and most of that money is getting it into the servers and getting it out of the servers. We've created really unique and novel ways to make that very cheap. So we stream. We don't. When you're on our platform, if anyone has their thing, you can go to Proscia.co and click Explore. You can start streaming these multi-gigabyte biopsies to your browser, and it works like Google Maps, and so we just stream sort of bits of content. You never grab 1 gigabyte at a time, and so we figured out all these ways to make it really cheap, but most of it goes to legal. Filing patents, we filed 2 provisionals. I was just on the phone with my lawyer like minutes before I got here, and we're filing 2 more, and that's going to be expensive, but that's kind of what it goes to. Forming corporate structure, we spent a lot of time doing that, maybe 5 months. Most of it was done in 3 months, but it's kind of an ongoing thing, and that was like $10,000, but we did it really, really well, and that's prevented a lot of problems. It's very easy to have problems when people leave, things change. We want to prevent anyone from suing us, because realistically, you don't think about this in the early stages, but the faster you grow, the more you realize, like, I talk to our competitors on the phone every week, and they're real, and they're out there, and they know about us, and if we take their business, they will sue us. That's so easy to do. And if they have more money than us, then they'll probably win and put the, bankrupt us. So we have to make, damn sure that we do it well. So a lot of money spent on legal.
So if you go to tech transfer, they're paid for it.
Yeah.
But then we get reimbursed from your potential customers or licensees.
Exactly. That's a huge thing. So that's why we kind of want to grow these sort of high barrier product segments, products with Hopkins, with their support. Because they want it to be successful, and we need important partners like Hopkins. Yeah.
So if I can interrupt, David mentioned Innovation Factory, and I'm also an officer there, and I'm actually one of the officers representing the School of Medicine here. But one of the things I want to point out is I really got into this because of Innovation Factory, because they have some really good people. It's almost like an incubator there, where there's people that have startups and from various backgrounds, starting from social enterprise to all kinds of stuff. And if any of you guys feel like at some point you need and they're one of our mentor groups actually. If you have any questions or really want to connect with anybody at Innovation Factory about how to go about ideation or things like that, questions that have come up, really talk to me and I will direct you to the right people. So they're having a venture capital group that they're trying to put together with students that are either venture capitalists or thinking about their career. So that's another really good resource that we're working with. So like David mentioned, they'll really help you get there. It's a good place platform. So yeah.
I also think it's worth mentioning that there's sort of in the works venture funds
Right.
that would invest small amounts, $5,000 to $10,000, and usually that's probably what you need to get through the early stages of a company, early stages in the first, couple months. So Elizabeth's made a lot of progress with that, and if anyone's interested in getting involved as an investor, because of the students that run it, and we'll certainly be investing in medical technologies. I shouldn't say we, I probably won't be involved in it, but
Innovation Factory.
yeah, Innovation Factory. Definitely get in touch if you're interested in that at all. Looking at some
Did you think about going through SBIR for your initial funding?
We're working on that right now, actually. Yeah. So we're taking on a little under $500,000 in dilutive capital, and what our investors are very keen on, what I'm very keen on, is putting that sort of in a treasure chest. You don't want to spend dilutive capital very quickly, so we're doing everything we can to boost ourselves with non-dilutive capital. Affiliating ourselves with Hopkins or licensing some IP from Hopkins also gives us opportunities. It's not that hard to get a TEDCO grant, for example, and we'll invest up to $100,000. It's like the cheapest money you'll get, if not free, given in certain scenarios. And so TEDCO grants from the state of Maryland are really good in addition to SBIRs. If anyone has any SBIR experience, by the way, I'd be really interested in getting your advice.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
So even from the moment you win it, you will have to wait for another year or two.
Yeah.
I have another question. You said you formed a new team, right? How did you meet these people? Are they people you're familiar with, or you met them from somewhere else?
So my main co-founder and our CTO, Coleman Stavish, I'm 21. I've known him for 16 years. We went to kindergarten together, grade school together, high school together, and he is the smartest developer I know. He taught me everything I knew about computers. And it sort of ended up being this thing where we were starting to build like a serious cloud platform towards the end of last academic year, right before I switched the team. And I was calling him up constantly asking him for help. We're built using Node.js technology. And I was like, hey, you really know Node.js. Like, call him up like every night. I'm like, listen, dude, we gotta do this together. And he said, yeah, I've been looking for a project. He had done a co-op with Bombardier. He had a ton of entrepreneurial experience before me. He paid his way through college by building iPhone apps and made so much money doing that as a 16-year-old. It blew everyone away. I mean, he bought a car, paid for college, insane, just did very, very well. And got to college looking for a new project. I said, hey, let's tackle cancer together. So that wrote to it, I think.
So I also want to add, as far as team building, again, like part of what the initiative for us is to really, I think I said that in my slides, is team building. So I think we want to help facilitate that if people have ideas. Don't feel like you don't want to say that because someone's going to steal and run away with it. But I think and we're trying to promote groups that will potentially be, or put the right people together, if that makes any sense. So you guys should probably try and network with each other. And again, I'll encourage, we'll try and get more people involved from other schools, like business schools. And that I think really helps to flesh out ideas. So like David said, like it really takes, you kind of have to do the networking to know who's out there. There's a lot of resources. So it's a part of what we're trying to do, really make people aware of the resources that we have. I think that's really the big goal here. Yeah, and I'm trying to kind of put together a whole list of mentors, like people from different industries and like specialties that can again connect you to the right people. So that would be something we'll try to have that available, and people should reach out to me if they have anything on that. So any questions about that? So.
There's no reason you can't find a good team member just within the Hopkins network. I've seen, I kind of had an unusual story. And I don't know if, I've worked really, really well with Colin, our CTO. But I don't know, I've heard of other stories where it doesn't work well. We've worked on so many projects together before. Everything is perfect, but, certainly get to know people better. However, I have seen a lot of really good companies in the Hopkins network that are just two medical students that said, hey, this would be really cool. I wonder if we could build a security platform for applying data. And that was the story of for tennis, sort of. I don't know if I got their business exactly right, but they do security. And they're just like two medical students, or medical student and PhD student, who met here, had a really great idea, and now they're making, they raised like $1 million round, and they're hundreds of thousands of dollars in contracts from the first year. So.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, thank you.
So if no one else has any questions, we'll just leave this floor open for networking and people just keep chatting and getting to know each other. And we have our next session in 2 weeks as a follow-up of this, and there we really want to cover a little bit more about ideation, but also probably try and see if people have ideas and how they want to go through the, like this sort of strategy to see where they can, whether they can make their idea into some kind of feasible idea. That's what we want to cover next time, which I have to say, just to make it inclusive, I'm trying to do that, we're trying to go and do that on Homewood campus this time, because we want participation from all campuses. So that's one of our initiatives. So it would be nice if most of you that have come here can spread the word and join us again, just as a continuity and carry through this. But we're also doing video recordings, so if you can't make it, it's okay, you guys can look at the, but it would be nice if people participate. So that's what I think we're kind of trying to get from this. All right, guys, thank you all for coming. And email me or HBN if you have more questions.
So we started using standard support